The research vessel Harmony's Edge floated silently in the cold void between Jupiter and its largest moon. Inside the massive ship, Dr. Kate Morrison stood before a wall of screens showing data about Earth and its people. Her fingers moved across holographic displays as she reviewed the information for the 10th time that morning. "Still nervous about meeting them?" asked Ryan Cooper, walking into the observation deck with 2 cups of coffee. The diplomatic officer handed one to Kate and took a sip from his own. Kate accepted the coffee gratefully. "Not nervous exactly. Just curious. The database says their planet is classified as a Class 12 death world. That's the highest rating in the system." Ryan raised an eyebrow. "What makes it so dangerous?" "Everything," Kate replied, pulling up images of Earth on the main screen. "Massive predators that hunt in groups, weather systems that can level entire cities, earthquakes that split continents, diseases that adapt faster than most species can, develop cures. And the gravity is nearly twice what most council species consider normal." The door slid open and Lisa Parker entered, her security uniform crisp and professional. "The human delegation just arrived at the station. They're requesting permission to board." Kate felt a flutter of excitement. After months of long-distance communication, they would finally meet face-to-face with representatives of this mysterious species from the edge of the galaxy. The 3 humans made their way to the main docking bay where Ambassador Zekthul waited. The insectoid diplomat's forearms clicked nervously against his ceremonial robes. His compound eyes reflected the docking bay lights as he turned to greet them. "Dr. Morrison, I trust everything is prepared for our guests?" His voice carried the slight buzzing quality common to his species. "Ready as we can be," Kate replied, "though I admit I'm still processing some of the data about their homeworld." Counselor Velnara materialized beside them, her crystalline form shimmering with soft blue light. The Etherian's telepathic voice echoed directly in their minds. "The preliminary scan suggests they are a young species, technologically behind most council members. They should integrate well as junior partners." The docking bay's atmosphere, processors hummed to life as the human shuttle approached. Kate watched through the reinforced windows as the small craft maneuvered with surprising precision. The ship itself looked different from anything in the council fleet. Where alien vessels favored smooth curves and artistic flourishes, the human shuttle was all angles and function. The airlock cycled open with a soft hiss. Kate held her breath as the first human stepped through. Colonel Jake Martinez moved with fluid confidence, his eyes sweeping the docking bay in a way that made Lisa's security instincts prickle. Behind him came Captain Amy Sullivan, her naval uniform bearing insignia that suggested high rank despite her relatively young appearance. 3 other humans followed, including a scientist named Dr. Paul Henderson and 2 military advisors. What struck Kate immediately was how they moved. Every step seemed calculated, their eyes constantly scanning their surroundings. Even in this peaceful setting, they maintained an awareness that reminded her of predators in documentaries about dangerous worlds. "Welcome aboard the Harmony's Edge," Ryan said, stepping forward with his best diplomatic smile. "I'm Ryan Cooper, diplomatic attaché. This is Dr. Kate Morrison, our xenobiologist, and Security Chief Lisa Parker." Colonel Martinez nodded respectfully. "Thank you for hosting us. I'm Colonel Jake Martinez, representing Earth's military interests. This is Captain Amy Sullivan of our Deep Space Fleet." Ambassador Zekthul approached, his forearms spread in the traditional Vextar greeting. "I am Ambassador Zekthul. On behalf of the Galactic Council, I welcome humanity to this historic moment." Kate noticed how the humans responded to the alien's presence. No fear, no disgust at his insectoid appearance, just calm assessment and polite acknowledgement. Most species showed some reaction when first encountering the Vextar's intimidating form. The group moved to the main conference room, a circular chamber with a massive viewport showing Jupiter's swirling storms. As they took their seats around the curved table, Kate began her prepared presentation about the Council and galactic civilization. The Galactic Council represents 47 species across 200 systems, she explained, gesturing to a holographic map of known space. "We've maintained peace for over 3,000 years through cooperation and mutual understanding. Captain Sullivan leaned forward slightly. What about species that don't want to cooperate? The question caught Kate off guard. While most civilized species recognize the benefits of membership, those few who choose isolation are left alone, provided they don't threaten council worlds. And if they do threaten council worlds? Colonel Martinez asked. Councillor Velnara's crystalline form pulsed with soft light. Such situations are resolved through economic sanctions and diplomatic pressure. Violence is rarely necessary among civilized beings. Kate watched the humans exchange glances. Something passed between them, a silent communication that spoke of shared experience and understanding. Dr. Henderson spoke for the first time. Your species have been fortunate to avoid major conflicts. Earth's history has been different. Before anyone could respond, alarms began blaring throughout the ship. Emergency lights bathed the conference room in red as Lisa's communicator crackled to life. Security Chief Parker, we have multiple contacts dropping out of hyperspace. Configuration matches Krillian Empire vessels. Lisa paled. The Krillians were one of the few species that rejected council membership, preferring to expand through conquest rather than diplomacy. Their raids on outer systems had been increasing in recent months. Ambassador Zekthul's compound eyes focused on the viewport where dark shapes were materializing against the star field. How many ships? 43 vessels, including at least one dreadnought class, came the reply. They're jamming all communications and moving to attack formation. The alien delegates began speaking rapidly in their native languages, panic evident in their voices. Kate felt her own heart racing as she realized they were trapped. The Harmony's Edge was a research vessel, not a warship. Through it all, she noticed something strange. While everyone else showed fear or confusion, the humans remained calm. Colonel Martinez was speaking quietly into his own communicator while Captain Sullivan studied the approaching fleet through the viewport. "Colonel, what are your orders?" came a voice from Martinez's device. Kate blinked in surprise. Orders? She looked at the human military officers with new understanding. They weren't just observers or diplomats. They were here with a purpose. Captain. Sullivan turned from the viewport and Kate saw something in her expression that made her blood run cold. It wasn't fear or panic. It was the look of a predator that had just spotted prey. "Admiral Torres, this is Sullivan. The Krillians just made their first mistake." She paused, her smile sharp and dangerous. "They attacked us." In that moment, Dr. Kate Morrison realized that everything the Council thought they knew about humanity was wrong. These weren't primitive beings seeking protection from advanced galactic powers. These were something else entirely, something that had learned to fight on a world that tried to kill them every day, something that had survived by becoming the most dangerous predators in their environment. And now the Krillians were about to learn what that meant. The conference room fell silent except for the wailing alarms. Through the massive viewport, the Krillian fleet spread across space like a dark cancer. The lead vessel, a massive dreadnought called the Bone Render, dwarfed every other ship in sight. Ambassador Zekthul's forearms trembled as he activated the emergency protocols. All diplomatic personnel to the secure shelters. The Krillians show no mercy to non-combatants. Kate watched in amazement as the alien delegates began filing toward the exits in barely controlled panic. Even the normally composed Councillor Velnara flickered with distressed colors as her crystalline form moved toward safety. But the humans remained seated. Captain Sullivan touched her earpiece and spoke in calm, measured tones. "Admiral Torres, this is Amy. We have 43 hostiles, including one dreadnought class, requesting immediate tactical support." A gruff voice crackled through the comm system. "Copy that, Amy. Hold tight. Cavalry's on the way." Dr. Kate Morrison stared at the human captain. "You have ships out there?" Colonel Martinez smiled, and Kate felt a chill run down her spine. It wasn't a friendly smile. It was the expression of something that had just realized it was about to feed. "Dr. Morrison, let me explain something about humans," Jake said, standing and walking to the viewport. "We come from a world that tried to kill us every single day for millions of years. Predators, diseases, natural disasters, starvation, cold, heat. Everything on Earth wanted us dead. The space around Jupiter began to shimmer. One by one, human ships appeared as their stealth systems disengaged. Kate counted 12 vessels, sleek and deadly-looking, that had been hiding in the asteroid field. We learned early that the universe doesn't care about fair fights, Captain Sullivan continued, her eyes fixed on the approaching Krillian fleet. So we stopped fighting fair. The lead human vessel, a heavy cruiser designated USS Defiance, moved into position between the research station and the Krillian fleet. Admiral Ben Torres's voice filled the comm channel. This is Admiral Torres of the Earth Defense Force. Krillian vessels, you are in violation of interstellar law. Withdraw immediately or face the consequences. War Commander Thexnall's response boomed across all frequencies. Pathetic humans. Your primitive ships are no match for Krillian might. Surrender now and your deaths will be swift. Kate looked at the tactical display showing the two fleets. The Krillians outnumbered the humans more than 3-1. By every measure of galactic warfare doctrine, the humans should have been preparing to surrender or flee. Instead, they were laughing. Dr. Paul Henderson pulled out a tablet and began showing Kate images from Earth. This is a grizzly bear, he said, displaying a massive brown creature. It weighs 800 pounds, has claws like knives, and can run 30 miles per hour. Humans hunt them for sport. He swiped to the next image. This is a great white shark, perfect killing machine, unchanged for millions of years. We swim with them for fun. Kate stared at the images, beginning to understand something that made her stomach turn. This is a hurricane, Paul continued, showing a satellite image of a massive storm system. Winds over 200 miles per hour, enough to level cities. We build our homes right in their path and then go outside to watch them hit. Lisa Parker was coordinating with her security teams throughout the station. All defensive positions manned. Marines are standing by for boarding actions. Marines? Ambassador Zekthul asked, his compound eyes wide with confusion. But this is a diplomatic vessel. Colonel Martinez turned from the viewport. Ambassador, there's something you need to understand about human diplomacy. We always prepare for the conversation to go badly. The first Krillian assault wave launched from their fleet. Hundreds of fighters and bombers streaked toward the human ships and the research station. Kate watched in horrified fascination as the human vessels didn't form defensive lines or try to match the enemy formation. Instead, they scattered like wolves breaking from cover. The USS Defiance rolled hard to starboard, its weapon systems coming online. But instead of engaging the fighters directly, it targeted something else entirely. A spread of torpedoes launched toward the outer edge of the Krillian formation, aimed at what appeared to be empty space. What are they shooting at? Counselor Velnara asked, her telepathic voice filled with confusion. Captain Sullivan smiled, that same cold smile. They're supply ships. See, most species fight like civilized beings. They engage military targets, avoid civilian casualties, follow the rules of war. The torpedoes struck their targets, and 3 Krillian vessels Kate hadn't even noticed exploded in brilliant flashes. The main fleet's formation wavered as they realized their logistical support had just been eliminated. We don't fight civilized wars, Jake said quietly. We fight to win. The human fighters engaged the Krillian assault wave, but not in any pattern. Kate recognized from galactic military doctrine. Instead of engaging in single combat or maintaining formation, they worked together like a pack hunting much larger prey. 3 human fighters would coordinate to cripple a single Krillian bomber, then immediately shift targets. They used the debris from destroyed enemies as cover, turning the battlefield itself into a weapon. Dr. Morrison, Captain Sullivan said, let me tell you about persistence hunting. Kate looked at her, not understanding. Humans used to hunt animals, much larger and stronger than themselves, by simply refusing to give up. We would chase them for hours, sometimes days, until they collapsed from exhaustion. Then we would kill them with rocks and sticks. On the tactical display, Kate could see the pattern emerging. The human ships weren't trying to destroy the entire Krillian fleet at once. They were wearing it down, piece by piece, targeting specific systems and support vessels. We learned that it doesn't matter how big or strong your enemy is, Colonel Martinez added. What matters is how long you can keep fighting when they want to quit. A series of explosions rocked the research station as Krillian fighters began their attack runs. But instead of finding terrified civilians, they encountered something unexpected. Human Marines had turned the docking bays into killing fields. They used the station's own systems against the attackers, venting atmosphere to space, activating fire suppression systems to blind enemies, and turning maintenance robots into improvised weapons. Kate watched through security feeds as small teams of humans moved through the station's corridors like ghosts. They didn't defend positions in the traditional sense. They hunted the invaders, using every environmental advantage available. You have to understand, Dr. Henderson said, still showing images from Earth. We didn't just survive on our world. We conquered it. We turned every challenge into an opportunity to become better killers. Ambassador Zekthul was staring at the tactical displays in growing horror. This isn't how warfare is conducted among civilized species. Captain Sullivan looked at him with something that might have been pity. Ambassador, we're not a civilized species. We're apex predators who learn to use tools. The first phase of the battle was ending. The Krillian assault wave had been decimated, their supply lines cut, and their boarding parties were being systematically eliminated by human forces that fought like the hostile environment that had shaped them. War Commander Thexnell's voice crackled over the comm, no longer filled with arrogant confidence. What manner of beings are you? Admiral Torres responded with the patience of a teacher explaining something obvious to a slow student. We're humans, Commander. We're the species that looked at a world full of things trying to kill us and decided to kill them back. Kate Morrison realized she was witnessing something that would change the galaxy forever. These weren't the primitive beings the Council had expected to guide and protect. These were predators. And they had just been given a reason to hunt. The space battle entered its second phase as Admiral Torres gave new orders to his fleet. Kate Morrison watched from the conference room viewport as the human ships moved in ways that defied everything she knew about space combat. The USS Relentless, under Captain Sullivan's command, led a group of destroyers in what appeared to be a retreat. The Krillian fleet, sensing victory, began to pursue. War Commander Thexnell's voice boomed across the comm channels, ordering his ships to finish off the fleeing humans. But Kate was beginning to understand that humans didn't really retreat. They repositioned. The destroyers suddenly reversed course, coming at the Krillian ships from angles that should have been impossible. They had used Jupiter's gravity well to slingshot around the gas giant, building up tremendous speed while appearing to flee. Pack hunting, Dr. Paul Henderson explained to the stunned alien observers. Wolves do this on Earth. They scatter to confuse their prey, then attack from multiple directions at once. The human ship struck the Krillian formation like lightning. Instead of trying to match firepower with the larger vessels, they targeted specific systems: engines, weapon arrays, sensor clusters. Each attack was surgical, precise, designed to cripple rather than destroy. Ambassador Zekthul's 4 arms clicked nervously as he watched the tactical display. Why don't they simply destroy the enemy ships? Colonel Martinez answered without taking his eyes off the battle. Because dead enemies can't tell you where their friends are hiding. On the Pi research station, the fighting had moved into the deeper levels. Kate watched through security feeds as human Marines demonstrated why they were called apex predators. They didn't just fight the Krillian boarding parties. They hunted them. Sergeant Dan Murphy led a team of 6 Marines through the station's maintenance shafts. The Krillians, expecting to find cowering civilians, instead found themselves facing humans who had turned the station's own infrastructure into a weapon. Murphy's team used the air circulation system to move unseen, dropping down behind enemy positions. They cut power to sections where Krillians were advancing, then used night vision equipment to fight in complete darkness. They turned the station's gravity generators into traps, creating pockets of zero gravity that left enemies helpless and disoriented. Your species is terrifying, Counselor Velnara said, her crystalline form pulsing with distressed colors as she watched the feeds. You use everything as a weapon. Dr. Kate Morrison found herself nodding. That's exactly what they do. On Earth, humans turned fire into a tool. They turned rocks into weapons. They turned other animals into partners. They even turned diseases into medicines. In space, the human fleet was demonstrating the same principle on a larger scale. The USS Defiance had positioned itself near a cluster of asteroids, using them as cover and ammunition. Tractor beams pulled rocks from the belt and hurled them at Krillian ships with devastating effect. Captain Amy Sullivan coordinated the attack. From her bridge, her voice calm and professional as she gave orders that would have sounded insane to any other species. Target the command ship's sensor array. I want them blind. Martinez, take your team through sections 7 through 12. Kill everything that moves, but leave the navigation officer alive. We need to know where their base is. Admiral Torres watched the battle unfold from his command center, occasionally giving orders but mostly letting his captains work. Kate realized this was another difference between humans and other species. Most galactic militaries required constant oversight and detailed commands. Humans trusted their people to improvise and adapt. Independence, Colonel Martinez explained, when Kate asked about it. Every human learns to think for themselves from childhood. We don't just follow orders. We understand the mission and find the best way to complete it. The Krillian fleet was beginning to fragment as War Commander Thexnal lost control of the battle. His ships, designed for overwhelming frontal assaults against defensive positions, couldn't adapt to the chaotic, multi-dimensional warfare the humans had unleashed. Lieutenant Commander Steve Walsh led a boarding party onto a Krillian heavy cruiser. But instead of trying to capture the ship, the humans did something that shocked the alien observers watching through intercepted communications. They turned the ship's weapons against its own fleet. How did they access the ship's system so quickly? Ambassador Zekthul asked, his compound eyes reflecting the explosions visible through the viewport. Torture, Captain Sullivan said matter-of-factly. We asked the crew for the access codes. They gave them to us. The casual way she said it made Kate's blood run cold. The other alien delegates shifted uncomfortably, beginning to understand that they were witnessing something beyond their experience. Doctor. Henderson pulled up more images from Earth on his tablet. This is a honey badger, he said, showing a small black and white animal. It weighs 30 pounds and regularly fights animals 10 times its size. It doesn't retreat. It doesn't surrender. It just keeps attacking until everything else is dead or runs away. He looked directly at Ambassador Zekthul. Humans are the honey badgers of the galaxy. The battle reached its turning point when Admiral Torres implemented what he called the spider web strategy. The human ships had been laying out a network of sensor buoys and communication relays throughout the engagement. Now they activated all of them at once. Suddenly, every human ship knew the exact position, speed, and heading of every Krillian vessel in real time. The scattered human fleet moved with perfect coordination, striking simultaneously at dozens of targets across the entire battlefield. War Commander Thexnal realized too late that he had fallen into a trap. The humans hadn't been fighting randomly. Every move, every seemingly desperate maneuver had been part of a larger plan to position his fleet exactly where they wanted it. Impossible, he transmitted on an open channel. No species can coordinate like this without central command. Admiral Torres responded personally. Commander, you're thinking like prey. Predators don't need someone to tell them how to hunt. They just do it. On the research station, the last pockets of Krillian resistance were being eliminated. But Kate noticed something that disturbed her even more than the violence. The humans weren't angry or excited about the fighting. They were methodical, professional, almost bored. Sergeant Murphy reported to Colonel Martinez with the same tone he might use to discuss the weather. Section 12 is clear. 17 enemy casualties, no prisoners. Found their communications, equipment. We have access to their fleet frequencies now. This is just another day at work for them. Kate whispered to herself. Dr. Henderson overheard her. Dr. Morrison, you have to understand something about humans. We've been at war with something every day of our existence. Predators, disease, starvation, other humans, natural disasters. Fighting is what we do. It's what we've always done. The Krillian flagship, the Bone Render, tried to break away from the battle, but Admiral Torres had positioned his fastest ships to cut off escape routes. The massive dreadnought found itself surrounded by smaller vessels that darted around it like wolves around a cornered bear. "Please," War Commander Thexnell transmitted, his earlier arrogance completely gone. "We surrender. We will withdraw from this system and never return." The response came not from Admiral Torres, but from Captain Sullivan. Her voice was as cold as the void of space. "Commander, you made a mistake when you decided to attack us, but your real mistake was not killing us fast enough." Kate Morrison watched in horrified fascination as the human fleet prepared for the final phase of their assault. The aliens had expected to witness a minor skirmish between primitive humans and an established galactic military power. Instead, they were watching the birth of something new and terrible. They were seeing what happened when apex predators from a death world decided that something needed to die. The final phase of the battle began with a silence that chilled every alien observer to their core. The human fleet stopped moving, stopped shooting, stopped communicating on open channels. For 30 seconds, space around Jupiter was perfectly still except for the burning wreckage of Krillian ships. Then Admiral Torres spoke on all frequencies. "War Commander Thexnell, you have attacked a diplomatic vessel under the protection of the Galactic Council. You have threatened human lives. You have fired on our ships. We are now going to show you what happens when someone threatens the human pack." Kate Morrison watched from the conference room as the human ships moved into what she could only describe as a hunting formation. They didn't spread out to surround the remaining Krillian vessels. Instead, they formed a tightening circle, like wolves closing in on wounded prey. The USS Defiance led the formation, its weapons targeting the Krillian flagship's engine systems. But they didn't fire to destroy. They fired to cripple, to trap, to make escape impossible. "Why don't they just finish it?" Ambassador Zek Thule asked, his forearms trembling as he watched the tactical display. Colonel Martinez looked at the insectoid, diplomat with something that might have been pity. "Because that would be quick. Quick deaths don't send messages." Captain Sullivan coordinated the attack from her position on the research station. Her voice remained calm and professional as she gave orders that would have horrified any civilized military force. "Target their life support systems but leave the crew compartments intact. I want them to feel what it's like to slowly run out of air. Target their communication arrays last. I want them to be able to call for help, but only after they understand that help isn't coming." Dr. Paul Henderson continued his impromptu education about human nature. He showed the alien delegates footage from Earth's oceans, where orcas played with their prey before killing it. "Humans learned this behavior from watching other apex predators," he explained. "It's not cruelty, it's education. When you completely dominate an enemy, you make sure everyone else understands what will happen if they threaten you." The Krillian ships tried desperately to break free from the trap. They fired everything they had at the encircling human vessels, but the humans had positioned themselves perfectly. Every shot that missed its target struck another Krillian ship instead. War Commander Thexnell's panic was evident in his transmissions. "Please, we surrender. We will pay tribute. We will withdraw from this entire sector." Admiral Torres responded with the patience of a teacher explaining a simple concept to a slow student. "Commander, you don't seem to understand. This isn't about territory or tribute. This is about making sure that every species in the galaxy knows what happens when someone threatens humans." On the research station, the last phase of the ground battle was ending. But Kate noticed that the human Marines weren't celebrating their victory. Instead, they were systematically documenting everything they found. Sergeant Dan Murphy's team had captured the Krillian boarding party's communication logs, weapons specifications, and tactical data. They treated the intelligence gathering with the same professional efficiency they had shown in combat. "Every battle is a learning experience," Colonel Martinez explained when Kate asked about the documentation process. "We study every enemy we fight so we can be better prepared for the next one." Dr. Kate Morrison felt a chill as she realized the implications. "The next one? You're already planning for future conflicts?" Captain Sullivan looked at her with genuine surprise. "Dr. Morrison, There's always a next one. Peace is just the time you spend preparing for the next war. The human fleet began the final convergence on the Krillian flagship, but instead of a glorious last stand, what followed was a methodical demonstration of superior tactics and technology. Lieutenant Commander Steve Walsh led a boarding party onto the Bone Render. The humans moved through the ship like a plague, systematically capturing or eliminating resistance. But they did it with surgical precision, taking prisoners when they needed information and eliminating threats when they didn't. The alien observers watched through intercepted security feeds as the humans demonstrated their understanding of psychological warfare. They didn't just defeat the Krillian crew, they broke them. Human soldiers would clear a section of the ship, then broadcast the screams of defeated enemies through the ship's communication system. They used the vessel's own security monitors to show surviving Krillians exactly what was happening to their comrades. "This is monstrous," Counselor Velnara whispered, her crystalline form flickering with distressed patterns. Dr. Henderson looked at her with something approaching sadness. "Counselor, this is mercy. If we wanted to be monstrous, we would have simply destroyed their ships from a distance. Instead, we're teaching them a lesson they can survive to share with others." War Commander Thexnall made his final transmission from the bridge of his dying flagship. His voice was broken, filled with the terror of someone who had finally understood the nature of his enemies. "What are you? What kind of species does this to their enemies?" Admiral Torres answered personally, his voice carrying across every frequency in the system. "We're humans, Commander. We're the species that spent millions of years learning how to kill everything that threatened us. We're the species that turned a planet trying to murder us into our home. We're the species that looked at a universe full of dangers and decided to become the most dangerous thing in it." The battle ended, not with an explosion, but with a whimper. The Krillian fleet was completely disabled, their crews captured or dead, their ships reduced to floating scrap. The human victory was so complete that it bordered on the artistic. But what disturbed Kate most was the reaction of the human forces. There was no celebration, no triumph, no joy. They simply began the process of salvaging useful materials and preparing damage reports. Captain Sullivan returned to the conference room, her uniform still crisp despite having coordinated a major space battle. She looked at the assembled alien delegates with the same professional courtesy she had shown at the beginning of the meeting. "I apologize for the interruption," she said politely. "Where were we in the diplomatic discussions?" Ambassador Zekthul stared at her in horror. "You just destroyed an entire fleet and you want to continue with negotiations?" Amy smiled, and Kate realized it was the first genuine emotion she had seen from any of the humans since the battle began. "Ambassador, that wasn't destruction. That was pest control. Now shall we discuss humanity's role in the Galactic Council?" The alien delegates looked at each other, finally understanding that everything had changed. They had come expecting to welcome a primitive species into galactic civilization as junior partners. Instead, they had witnessed the emergence of Apex, predators who could casually destroy established military powers while discussing trade agreements. Dr. Kate Morrison realized she was looking at the future of the galaxy. A future where the most dangerous predators in known space wore diplomatic uniforms and spoke politely about cooperation, while calculating exactly how to kill anything that threatened them. The humans had just announced their arrival on the galactic stage, and they had done it by demonstrating that they could end any threat with professional, terrifying efficiency. The universe had just become a much more dangerous place for anyone foolish enough to threaten the human pack. 3 days after the battle, the emergency session of the Galactic Council convened on the neutral station orbiting Centauri Prime. Representatives from 47 species gathered in the Great Assembly Hall, their voices creating a symphony of fear and confusion. Dr. Kate Morrison sat in the observer section, still trying to process what she had witnessed. The debris field around Jupiter now contained the remains of 43 Krillian vessels. Not a single human ship had been destroyed. The victory had been so complete that it defied everything the galaxy thought it knew about warfare. Ambassador Zekthul took his place at the speaker's podium. his forearms clicking nervously against the ceremonial robes of his office. The great hall fell silent as he began to speak. Honored delegates, we gathered today to discuss the events at Jupiter and their implications for galactic security. What we witnessed was not merely a battle, but a demonstration of capabilities that challenge our understanding of civilized warfare. Murmurs filled the hall. The Vextar ambassador's compound eyes swept across the assembled delegates before continuing. The species known as humans has requested full membership in the Galactic Council, with all the rights and responsibilities that entails. However, given recent events, this request requires careful consideration. Counselor Velnara materialized at her designated position, her crystalline form pulsing with controlled patterns of light. Her telepathic voice reached every mind in the assembly. The humans claim to come in peace, yet they destroyed an entire military fleet with methods that horrify civilized beings. How can we trust a species that treats warfare as if it were a science? Admiral Ben Torres entered the hall, flanked by Captain Amy Sullivan and Colonel Jake Martinez. The human delegation moved with the same fluid confidence that had impressed Kate during their first meeting. They took their seats in the petitioners section without showing any sign of concern about the debate surrounding them. High Chancellor Morthek of the Etherian Collective called for order. The ancient being's voice carried the weight of 3 millennia of galactic diplomacy. Admiral Torres, you stand accused of conducting warfare in a manner inconsistent with civilized standards. The Krillian fleet, while aggressive, posed no threat that justified the level of destruction you employed. Admiral Torres stood slowly, his weathered face showing no emotion. When he spoke, his voice carried clearly through the massive hall. High Chancellor, with respect, the Krillian fleet attacked a diplomatic vessel under Council protection. They fired on human ships. They boarded a research station with intent to harm civilian personnel. In human terms, they committed acts of war. The Chancellor's crystalline form flickered with annoyance. Yet your response was disproportionate. The complete destruction of their fleet sends a message of aggression to the entire galaxy. Captain Sullivan rose from her seat. High Chancellor, may I address the Council? After a moment's hesitation, the Chancellor granted permission. Amy walked to the center of the hall, her naval uniform crisp and professional. She looked around at the assembled delegates with calm confidence. Honored representatives, I understand your concern. You see our actions as excessive because you view warfare as a last resort, something to be avoided whenever possible. But you need to understand something about humans. She gestured to a holographic display that showed images from Earth. Predators hunting prey, natural disasters reshaping continents, human settlements thriving in environments that would kill most galactic species. We come from a world that tried to eliminate us every single day for millions of years. We survive by becoming better at killing than anything else on our planet. When we fight, we don't fight to make a point or to claim territory. We fight to ensure that our enemies never threaten us again. The display shifted to show the aftermath of the Jupiter battle. Detailed scans of the Krillian wreckage, prisoner interrogations, and intelligence gathered from captured ships. The Krillian Empire has been expanding through conquest for 2 centuries. They have enslaved 17 species and destroyed 4 civilizations completely. War Commander Thexnall was planning to attack 12 more systems, including 3 council worlds. Shocked murmurs filled the hall. Captain Sullivan waited for silence before continuing. We didn't destroy the Krillian fleet because we wanted to. We destroyed it because allowing even one ship to escape would have meant more innocent deaths in the future. Every human understands this calculation. It's how we survived on our world. Dr. Paul Henderson stepped forward with his tablet. Honored delegates, may I share some final observations about human nature? The Chancellor granted permission. Paul activated the holographic display, showing footage of various Earth species. This is how a pack of wolves eliminates a threat to their territory. They don't simply drive it away. They destroy it completely to ensure it never returns. This is how great white sharks hunt. They don't wound their prey and hope it leaves. They kill it efficiently and move on. He looked directly at the assembled delegates. Humans learned from the best teachers in the universe. Every predator on our world taught us that half measures lead to death. When something threatens your pack, you eliminate the threat completely. Colonel Martinez stood and walked to join his colleagues. Delegates, you're asking the wrong question. You're asking whether you can trust a species that fights like we do. The real question is whether you can afford not to have us as allies. The hall fell silent. The implications of his words hung in the air like a challenge. The Krillian Empire was one threat among many. There are others out there, species that view the Council's peaceful nature as weakness to exploit. We offer you partnership with beings who have spent their entire evolutionary history learning to protect their own. Admiral Torres joined his officers in the center of the hall. High Chancellor, the human government authorized me to make this offer. We will share our defensive technologies with Council worlds. We will provide military training to species that request it. We will stand between the Council and any threat that emerges from the dark spaces between stars. He paused, looking around the hall with the confidence of someone who knew he held all the advantages. In return, we ask for full membership in the Council, with voting rights and territorial recognition. We ask for the right to establish defensive stations in strategic systems, and we ask for the understanding that when threats emerge, we will deal with them in the human way. The debate that followed lasted 18 hours. Species after species rose to voice concerns, ask questions, and debate the implications of accepting humanity as a major galactic power. In the end, the vote was unanimous, not because every species trusted humans, but because every species understood that the galaxy had fundamentally changed. The age of purely diplomatic solutions to major threats had ended at Jupiter. Dr. Kate Morrison watched from the observer section as the formal documents were signed. She thought about her first meeting with the human delegation, how they had seemed like peaceful explorers seeking to join galactic civilization. Now she understood the truth. Humans hadn't come seeking protection or guidance from advanced galactic powers. They had come to take their place as the galaxy's apex predators. As the ceremony concluded and delegates began filing out of the hall, Captain Sullivan approached Kate. Dr. Morrison, I hope you'll continue your research into human nature. The galaxy needs to understand what we are and why we do what we do. Kate looked at the human officer, remembering the calm efficiency with which she had coordinated the destruction of an entire fleet. Captain, I think I'm beginning to understand. You're not just another species joining the Council. You're the species that makes sure the Council can continue to exist. Amy smiled, and for the first time, Kate saw genuine warmth in the expression. Dr. Morrison, we're pack hunters who learn to use tools. Everything else follows from that. Simple fact. The galaxy is our territory now, and we protect what's ours. As the human delegation prepared to leave, Kate realized she had witnessed history. The Galactic Council had gained its first apex predator species. The universe had just become a much safer place for those under human protection, and a much more dangerous place for anyone foolish enough to threaten the human pack.